Stardate 1029.2021. Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a kind of smart, kind of funny podcast about new and classic Star Trek. This week, we're super stoked to be reviewing the series premiere of yet another
another one, just another
Star
one.
Trek, another in the line. It's like a what are those factories that just put, what is that called?
Uh,
Moving things tonight.
An assembly line.
mhm.
That's what it is. It's like an assembly line, but a quality one, right? Because this week we are covering Star Trek Prodigy, the new animated series from Nickelodeon and Paramount Plus. We're going to dive into the first two-part episode that dropped earlier this week. But first, I'm your reluctant captain, Mike Garcia. With me on the view screen, we have
Mariah Gossett.
Clyde Haynes.
And we typically do this live pod on Thursday nights, but a lot of us have been working or out of town and just unable to get together earlier this week. So we're glad you're here with us tonight or listening on the pod feed. And I think Clyde is the only one in his actual podcast studio right now. Mariah is traveling in LA. Am I supposed to say that? I can say that.
Yeah, I can divulge that I'm in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just moved into a new apartment in Austin. I don't have my setup yet, and so I'm totally echoey. You can see like a half assembled IKEA futon in the background. It's all good. It's all good. People can relate, right?
Yes, very relatable content.
Oh, yeah.
So thanks everybody for showing up. Grant's not going to be with us tonight. He, you know what? I think he's doing another podcast tonight.
That
Yeah.
traitor.
What?
Not cool.
No,
man.
not cool.
I know
We'll
we took over Friday night, which I think he already had something planned.
Yeah,
So.
he got something. He had something else.
He's
on the
probably
calendar.
somewhere drinking and talking about beer, knowing Grant.
Probably.
He's drinking, talking about video games tonight. I think is what he's doing.
Ah.
But yeah, we're going to talk about Prodigy. The series premiere aired earlier this week, and it was a two-part premiere. But before we dive into that, I want to remind everybody, if you want to support this podcast, visit us at patreon.com/Star Trek Pod. There you can make a $2 an episode pledge. And if you do, not only will you get a whole back catalog of awesome bonus content where we review almost every original series Star Trek movie, like hour-long episodes all about Star Trek 5. You know you want that. We have content all about 7 of 9 and the best 7 of 9 episodes. Tons of great series that we have for you there behind the Patreon wall. And you'll also be invited to our private Slack community that's full of Star Trek fans that have watch parties almost every single night of the week, watching old Star Trek episodes, watching movies. I think earlier tonight, or maybe it was yesterday, everybody got together and watched the Prodigy premiere again to be ready to talk about it tonight in the chat. So it's great. Visit us at patreon.com/Star Trek Pod, and that's how you can support us. Mariah, where else can people find us?
Oh, yeah. So you can go to StarTrekPod.co to find links to all our social media pages, also places you can download the audio version of the podcast, and all of the links to find the video versions as well, so that you can join us for the live chats, because it's really fun getting to engage with everybody during the live stream. So thanks for tuning in, folks. So that's StarTrekPod.co.
Clyde, tell people how they can join us tonight on the pod.
If you happen to be joining us live in the chat, feel free to type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital Pod in the chat, and we will know that you have a question or a comment. Also, as we get to that special section that you know about, you can type a capital HF, and we'll know that you have a hot something to share with us. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Speaking of capital HFs, guys, I want to know what you thought about this series premiere of Prodigy. With some hot freaks. Hot freaks! All right. And of course, chat. Everybody in the chat watching live, give us your hot freaks in the chat. Tell us how you felt about this premiere, this like 42-minute premiere Prodigy. I thought we're getting like a 24-minute episode or something, because that's how long this series is going to be going forward. But we got kind of a double episode. But I don't want to give away what I thought about it. Mariah, tell us what you thought. What's your hot freak?
I thought this was a super fun ride. I think it's like very beautiful and like sophisticated animation. I thought the story was much more complex than I thought they were going to go for a kids show. Um, I'm also really excited for those of us who are already Trek fans to get to explore some new species, getting to hang out in the Delta Quadrant. Also, we're back with my favorite captain, even if she is a hologram. So I'm going to take the win for that anyway. And I I think it's like a very smart, I mean, from like a business perspective, smart decision on their part to get kids invested in this, but also just as a general fan, I really enjoyed the storytelling in this episode. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm interested to see how they're going to be able to sort of carry this sort of epic storytelling into a shorter format, because I do think this was Lost and Found part 1 and 2, and it was hard for me to even figure out where potentially that break would have been if this was typical television, where that we would have perhaps had some commercials. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Clyde Haynes.
Yeah, I thought this was really fascinating. So we've been inundated with so much Trek. I have to admit that there are things that slip my mind from time to time. And one of those was I forgot that this was a children's show. And so when the credits started to roll and it said Nickelodeon on it, I was like, "Oh, wow, this is going to be a little bit different." And so I was like, "Oh." And to your point, Mariah, in fact, Mike, when you said it's a two-parter, I actually, while you were talking, went to Paramount to go, wait, did I see both parts? And I realized that one episode was two parts, but I couldn't tell. And I thought that long story format actually served it really well, because it didn't feel rushed, right? To give us the backstory, the origin story. It didn't feel like you had to do all these things to explain who the characters were very fast. It took its time, so I appreciated that. I also thought it was fascinating because I tried to watch this with my daughter a little bit, and one of the things that she's not really a sci-fi fan, but one of the things that she asked me was, she said, "Is this Star Wars or Star Trek?" And I thought that was incredibly fascinating because it had very much a certain kind of Attack of the Clones Star Wars feel to it, including, I was looking at these robots and going, that looks kind of familiar. So it had, and also when I think about that, also, I guess either originally or somewhat a children's, targeted toward children, it was a little bit dark, where even though it had a TVY 7 rating, I was asking myself, for my young children, is this going to be appropriate, and how much action and sequences are there going to be? So it was kind of interesting. But I enjoyed it and thought it was a good story, and I like the characters. I'm not quite sure about that blobby looking thing,
Murph.
Come on.
I'm not sure about Murph. I'm just not sure about Murph yet, but overall, I thought it was good.
Unpopular opinion on Murph from Clyde. Thank you very much, sir.
I didn't say I didn't like Murph. I said I'm not sure about Murph.
No, sir. That is an unpopular opinion. The popular opinion is I love Murph. I want to hug and protect Murph. All right?
I'm just trying to make sure that Murph is not some marketing grab that's going to be the Baby Yoda toys that come out. I mean, I need something more than that.
It's a living gel pack from Voyager. It's so cute. I love it.
I actually did like Rock Talk though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm going to echo what you guys said, and I have a lot of positive yet unstructured thoughts about this episode in my head, but I was really surprisingly captivated by this first episode. Mariah, you mentioned the storytelling was great. I have to agree. It was, a lot of times with kid shows, obviously, what you think when you think about kid shows, you think, oh, it's going to be cute and fun, and it's going to be very simplified and not very complex or engaging. And this wasn't a Terrence Malick movie or anything, but it was very engaging and it was really compelling. The storyline did go to some places that were surprising, and the storytelling itself was very efficient, but not in a way that um, felt rushed or curtailed. Um, it helps that it does take place in the Star Trek universe. So already when I hear that music and I see some of the graphics, I feel okay. Even though this looks different and feels different and is aimed at a different audience than the audience that we are, that I am, my age bracket, I do feel that I'm home a little bit. I do feel, and when they found a ship, and actually it was about 12 minutes in when the lead villain mentions the Federation. It's about 12 minutes, and I was like, all right, they're pulling us back into the Star Trek universe. And of course, they find the ship and they find the Delta, and then the translators start working. And at the end, Janeway pops up. It's like, okay, I'm definitely in a corner of the Star Trek universe I've never been to before, and I'm excited by it because instead of like splashing so many very noticeable Easter eggs or references on the screen in the first, 20, 30 minutes or first 40 minutes, whatever this was, this show did a smart thing. It made us care about the plight of these brand new characters, and it introduced us to this brand new, colorful little corner of the universe. And it did that like it didn't even have to be Star Trek. It was just a good little story about a crew coming together and escaping oppression, right? And escaping tyranny. And how do you do that? You get inspired by the symbol of the Federation, which is this great ship and these deltas and these badges that allow you to communicate with the people next to you. That was a big thing happening in this episode. They couldn't communicate with each other because there were so many young people on this planet working together, but unable to communicate. And they were all together, but isolated because the oppressors decided, we're not going to allow these people to communicate. That's another way to oppress them. But when they walked on that ship and they realized they could talk to each other, all of everything they thought about each other that was negative was washed away, and they just wanted to embrace each other and work together. And I love that. And the characters are so different, but they all had that common goal of wanting to escape this tyranny that they're living under. I think that's a really universal story. We all have struggles. We're not all in prison camps, thank God, but we all have struggles, and we sometimes we look to symbols to inspire us, right? And I felt that's what this was about. And we got the ultimate symbol at the end when Janeway shows up, looking fly, and of course, it's a return of Kate Mulgrew to Star Trek, which was amazing. And I was so captivated by this that I thought that was the end of part 1 when she shows up at the end. And then the thing started playing, Paramount Plus started playing a Discovery episode. I'm like, wait, what happened? Oh, I actually watched like 40 some odd minutes. It felt like it just breezed by, but in a good way. I was just having so much fun. So long way of saying I connected with this. Thumbs up. I'm going to be watching the entire season.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I watched it twice. I watched it yesterday and then I watched it again this afternoon. And there was still like, for a kid's show, there's new details that I saw on the second watch. So I think it's very, also just the background paintings. I'm just so impressed with like the artistic direction they've taken this show. And I think like the layouts are beautiful. The background paintings are gorgeous. There are a few times that I don't know if it was the stream, but sometimes the mouths didn't always match up super well with the dialogue, which sometimes bothers me. But I'm sure it's just going to get better and better. And I know they've already been renewed for a season 2. So I'm sure it's just going to get, as the characters get more refined and hopefully bigger budgets are given, like similarly to how we saw in Lower Decks, the animation usually gets better each season. But they have a lot to work with here. And yeah, I think all the characters are super compelling. And I like that we sort of have these different they're the familiar archetypes we're used to in Trek, right? We have the engineer, the communicator, the captain, and like all of these things that they're all sort of naturally trying to figure out where they belong on the bridge. And so I really enjoyed watching them try to figure out where they all needed to be. Murph apparently is in charge of weapons, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did Murph know that Murph was setting off those phasers, or did
Who
Murph
knows?
just slip and on a banana peel and fall in the phasers? We don't know.
We
The mystery of Murph.
Yeah, and then I find the relationship. So we have Gwen, who's been kidnapped essentially, but not totally against her will. And her father is the I wrote it down here,
Diviner.
the diviner, and they're the last two of their species. And so I'm interested into how I have a feeling that his vengeance against feelings against the Federation probably has something to do with the fact that they're the last two of their kind. And I wonder what happened to their people, essentially, that drove him to be such a tyrant, to have children and orphans mining, looking for a Federation ship.
I like that. I don't mind a villain with a credible backstory to his villainy, a villain you can relate to, and especially if it's interrogating the Federation. Because as we found out in almost every series, even though the Federation is great and wants to do good, and it's based in these extremely positive, progressive ideals, sometimes they're colonizers. Sometimes they steamroll over people and planets without thinking about it. So
yeah, and I think the other thing, oh goodness, now I lost what I was going to say about Gwen and the series creators talked about how they were very inspired by Khan, and Khan is sort of the ideal big bad villain in Trek, and sort of having that like villain who's beyond just like a mustache twirler and actually has like a reason for wanting to be a villain, essentially, which I think is where we get some of the best ones, like Killmonger from Black Panther, I think is a really compelling villain, right? And it's like, are they really villains, or are they just misunderstood and like things just didn't fall the way that they should have fallen for them, that kind of thing. So I'm glad we're not just getting, especially for a kids show, I think it's very easy to just be like, there are good guys and bad guys. And so I'll be interested to see, because I think we explore that a lot in Trek, is that it's not always super clear to fall into those two categories.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I mean, I find it fascinating to ask myself, is this really a kid's show? Right? Because when we think about kids shows, one, everybody's talking about the graphics in the chat. The graphics are absolutely amazing. But I think beyond that, the storytelling. I was reading a book, this Tristan Strong series, and I'm fascinated by it. It's a kind of a African American mythology series, so I'm curious about it, and I find it absolutely frustrating. And the reason why I find it frustrating is because so often material that is written for children, the characters do things that adults are constantly screaming, why are you doing that? Right? Why aren't you taking this more seriously? Why aren't you paying attention? Or why are why are you going left when everyone knows you should go right? And I think if you look at a lot of shows, they do that kind of for comedic effect and to be kind of silly. This show didn't really have any of that. And when you talk about great storytelling, everything that Dahl did made sense. Everything that Zero did made sense, even to the point where the things that Gwen did as a quasi semi villain still made sense, right? There wasn't anything that was done just to be silly, or just to kind of prolong the scene. It was really all purposeful, and I enjoyed that, right? And so there's so many things about this, that this is one of those things that feels like, if it's almost like, if children like it, great, but Star Trek fans are going to find this to feel like home.
I think the reaction overall from fans has been pretty positive. Everything I've read online, seen on Twitter, people are like, yeah, this makes sense. We're in 2021. Let's get a Star Trek show that is has some beautiful computer animation that will draw the younger viewers in, but it is also not going to um, treat them like they're an uneducated audience, right? It's telling them a story that sure is kind of born out of tropes. We do see some tropey stuff, obviously, but there's also depth there. There's also depth of character, and I'm really enjoying that. I do think still it's a children's film because the storytelling is very good and deep, but it's very straightforward and simplified, and I think it makes it easy for kids to latch on to a story when it's told just very matter of factly like that. We have some hot freaks coming in from the chat.
I mean, not to mention the chat is blowing up. I feel like there are more people chatting about this show this rapidly than some of the others. I don't know, maybe
Well, it makes sense.
Friday night or what.
This is the first of its kind, right? A modern computer-generated Star Trek animated series that is aimed at a very young audience. It's the franchise attempting to cultivate a whole new generation of fans with really good content. Not just kind of spoon feeding them sugar.
You talk about how when your episode ended, it served you up Discovery. When mine episode ended, it served me up a little thing that you refer to as Star Trek the animated series. So is it the first? I mean, was that who was that targeted toward?
First computer generated. Star Trek the animated series was basically the original series with a little more flights of fancy. And I don't think kids on Saturday morning enjoyed it all that much.
Speak for yourself. I'm just kidding.
Choopy's got a hot freak. She says, I thought I'd enjoy it, but I was riveted. I fell in love with every character. And, good point here. How did they manage to already make the ship a character? What do you guys feel about that? Do you think the ship is a character?
I mean, yeah, it already, I don't know if it's like, I mean, we got the beauty shot moment, right? When it comes through the water, I was like, I like that we're getting some of our favorite things that we always get in our Trek shows, right? And I think, when the ship opens the door for Dahl, when he puts his hand on it, I thought that's that moment of like the ship's like, oh, someone needs me, even though we know the ship isn't sentient in that way, but it was like an interesting, I thought, plot device to be like, this opening of hope, an opening of a new door, that kind of thing for Dahl and for Rock Talk. And, and then when the translator starts working, so it's like the ship is definitely pushing plot forward as if it's a character, but I'm excited to see what they do with it as it keeps going forward.
I think for me, go ahead, Clive.
I was just gonna say I didn't quite get character yet. I could see it because there are a couple things that I'm missing. And I feel like we've seen them in the Star Trek universe. So there was this whole moment, and I think we've had a couple moments where they've toyed with us in Discovery of making the ship a very sentient character, right? So they've teased it out there a little bit, whether it's been an episode or a short track, and they pulled it back. But also, I'm used to, when we talk about Star Trek ships, you immediately know what ship we're talking about, right? If you're talking about the Enterprise, if you're talking about Voyager, if you're talking about Deep Space Nine, even so much if you're talking about the Runabout, right, or the Delta Flyer, there are all these ships that you're like, I know what that is. I think this ship is called the Protostar. The Protostar, but I didn't get that angle where the ship comes in and you see the NCC 1701. Like I didn't get that from where it was like, pay attention to my name, know my name. I didn't get that shot. And no one referred to it as we're going to the like they were saying it, but it was kind of like, well, what are they talking about? So I'm not there yet, but I can easily see where we would be there. And to, I agree with you, Mariah. I definitely thought that the ship was pushing plot forward.
Yeah, I think the ship as a character for me felt like it was an engine to like emancipation for these people, right? It was something to give them a brand new life. it allowed them to escape their prison, right? And so, and it changed their world completely, changed their universe. And also, if we're talking about the ship as a character, I'm sure we'll get to know the ship more as we go on. We really just kind of explored the whatever entry port they went into, then we got directly to the bridge. But as soon as things started lighting up and turning on, it reminded me about when this series is set, because we got a lot of the holographic controls pop up, which we've only seen in Picard, the Picard series. We didn't see those in TNG. Oh, of course, we've also seen them now in Discovery, since we're so far in the future. So I was like, oh yeah, this isn't a different time period. I think it's
It's 5
right.
years after Voyager comes home.
Is that when it is? Okay.
Yeah.
So that would make it 5 years before the Picard's big whatever happened.
Okay, so Lise A said Prodigy is sandwiched between Lower Decks and Picard timeline. Okay, that makes sense. So it's super interesting because we'll get a chance to see how what happened in the Alpha Quadrant affected the Delta Quadrant. That's true. The Delta Quadrant is so far away from the Alpha, which is Federation territory, but it obviously the Federation has affected characters in this series, not only because the ship's there, but because the main villain is like, fuck the Federation.
Well, I'm excited to understand. Like, they've done a really good job of planting some mysteries that are fascinating to me. Right, one being what happened to the diviner and his people, but also how the hell did that ship get out there? Right.
Yeah.
Because the idea was that once Voyager made it back to the Delta Quadrant, we had stopped playing with the Delta Quadrant. Bad things happen in Delta Quadrant. Let's focus on the Alpha Quadrant. Now there is a very technologically advanced ship in the Delta Quadrant. How to get there? And clearly with a Janeway like holographic program on there, that there's a lot about that is mysterious.
Did somebody who has experience, a Federation member who has experience in the Delta Quadrant, pilot that ship out there? Did Harry Kim take it out there? That'd be cool.
Yeah,
he's the last person needs to be piloting anything anywhere.
I was gonna say Tom Paris, but we've seen him in Lower Decks, so he probably won't appear.
I do know that Beltran is reprising the role of Chakotay as a voice for this series, so that's a possibility that we'll get to see that. But also, just to confirm, it does take place in the 2380s, so the 24th century of Trek, and apparently the showrunners of Picard and of this show have been in like pretty intense communication to make sure that they keep all the timelines correct. So I was like, that has to be such a stressful thing to have to just like, hang on, let's zoom into the other Zoom writer's room to make sure whatever events we're planning don't mess up the events the other people are planning, and what events they're planning don't mess up our planning. So that's got to be pretty intense.
I think it helps that they're like in the Delta Quadrant, kind of far away from wherever Picard is.
For sure.
This is funny. Linda B says, is it a problem that Janeway might be pushing coffee and caffeine to children?
I mean, it's only if she's going to make these kids drink the coffee. If she's just drinking coffee, who cares?
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of it is I think what we'll need to see is whether or not Janeway the Janeway hologram is recognizing that they're actually children, right? Versus just crew. I think that'll be interesting, because if she's recognizing these are kids, then the smart move would be to lock them out from all the systems. But if she's just seeing them as crew, then you train them and keep them going.
It also depends on what type of hologram she is, right? Because similarly to the Doctor on Voyager, right? Like there's limitations to what he can do as the hologram versus what the computer is capable of versus what the ship is capable of. So it'll be interesting to see, like what her capabilities are as the series continues.
Not just her capabilities, but her character. Will this character be allowed to grow and change and feel emotions like the Doctor did? Because the Doctor was there as just an emergency hologram, right? but he grew and changed and became a very deep and interesting character with his own internal life, right? Are we going to see this new version of Janeway become someone different? Like, are they going to take the route of this is a different Janeway and this is her story or her new evolution, or is it more based in the Janeway that we know? I don't know. Interesting.
I think the thing that makes this challenging from a writer standpoint is that you're bringing in. It's not like you would bring, like, if you brought in Tom Paris, like you bring in Tom Paris to LDS, you can kind of do whatever you want to with that character, right? But you're bringing in Janeway. This is Kate Mulgrew, right? Like, first of all, if I say Kate Mulgrew, I imagine that she's done some other things outside of Star Trek, but her brand is Janeway. So I would imagine that someone of her ability is not letting you play very like fast and loose with something that is near and dear to, you know, her livelihood. And so I think you're gonna, and I say that also to say is that I don't think she's gonna show up and be a part of this project if it's gonna be really tight and she's just playing this, you know, basically a robot. So I would imagine that we're gonna get some Kate in this. We're gonna get some Janeway, and this is gonna be something because to me, for her to sign on for this, that's a significant. I mean, if we can say whatever we want to about Picard, but you know, part of the reason why Picard is because you're crazy if you don't think Sir Patrick Stewart doesn't have a significant hand in what's happening, right? Because I mean, again, he's done a ton of stuff and had, you know, he's Professor X, but we all know him as Jean-Luc Picard. So I think these properties are too significant to the actors and involved that they're not taking a significant role in how those characters are showing up. So which to me, Mike, makes it I'm that much more excited about the show because
I think she's very smart with her choices.
Yes.
They're going to give her a lot to chew on for sure because she's that kind of actor who's like, I need to have meat in the script, so give it to me. You know, she's that kind of actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure it was not, you know, easy for her to decide if she wants to reopen this chapter in her, you know, sort of work
especially
history.
If she watched Picard.
And not just that, her time on Voyager. I mean, every time she talks about it at conventions and documentaries, she's like, I love the work we did, but it came at a great personal loss for me and my family because I didn't get to spend time with them for like 7 years. So there's some trauma there for her.
Yeah, because even today I watched the Ready Room bonus stuff, and there was an interview with Kate Mulgrew, and she was like, you know, it was an important chunk of time, but it was 7 years of 16-hour days, like, which is an intense amount of work and time with that character. So she, I think, is going to be very smart. But she did say this is a much easier production schedule.
Yeah, especially since I think a lot of them just recorded from home, right?
Yeah, I think she went into a studio, but yeah, she's just like, it's just me in a little black room with the director on a Zoom, and like, so yeah, that's interesting. I was gonna say I saw some chit chat in the chat about the ages of our main characters, and I think this kind of also helps set I think maybe the more mature tone that we're sort of picking up on is that they almost all of them are teenagers. So Dahl is 17, Gwen is 17, Jankum Pog, the engineer, is 16. There's no age on the Medusan because they're a Medusan. And then Ruktok is 8. So that's our youngest character.
I want to talk about did we get the Medusan? We don't know how old the Medusan is, you said.
No, because it's a Medusan, so there's no life form or body to age.
A non-corporeal ball of energy.
Yeah, the Medusan doesn't come off as a child, right? Or as a teenager. No. Just this wise being.
Yeah.
Especially
a little mischievous, maybe, but
especially if they can read minds, because that's a lot of knowledge.
It's Angus Emery, I think is how you say their last name. They're an English actor. They did mostly a lot of BBC stuff.
That's not who I thought it was at all. But okay.
Can we give shouts to Jason Mantzoukas?
Oh my gosh.
That. Come on, casting Mantzoukas as a teenage Tellarite. It's perfect.
I mean, you say perfect. I go, that's a big roll of the dice. Like,
oh yeah,
to have a almost 50-year-old dude.
Well,
play.
it's not just that. I mean, it is. If you think about his other work, this is pretty on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Right?
it's not
far,
R-rated. Yeah,
far flung from Big Mouth.
Big Mouth, and I think he was in
the League. Yeah,
and I'm Sorry and stuff like this. This is just on another end.
Although he does a ton of voiceover work, so I'm sure there's been like a peppering of other shows that are more kid friendly throughout the years. But yeah, definitely not the main squeeze of that man's career.
I'm sure there's a lot of fun audio outtakes with him.
Oh, man.
Oh, I imagine the editing crew is just like, this is gonna be challenging.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how some of this might connect to Voyager just for a second, because Kern says there's lots of potential repercussions on the show from Voyager's time in the Delta Quadrant, such as the Voyager's brief alliance with the Borg. I could imagine that negatively impacting some of the species here. Do you think we're going to play on some of the history of Voyager being the first Federation crew in the Delta Quadrant, now that this crew has a very advanced Federation ship that's flying blind through the Delta Quadrant? Are we going to kind of pull at those strings from Voyager? Do you want to see that at all?
I think you have to. Right?
I don't know if you do, though, because they're not Federation kids.
Yes, but I mean, you've got a ship in the Delta Quadrant with a Janeway AI on it, right? And we've already seen a who was the guy who brought the little Cation?
Oh, the guys with the really stiff hair.
Yeah, who
Kazon.
Kazon,
yeah.
right? So we've already seen a Kazon, and we know that Voyager had a number of arcs with the Kazon, right? So to me, I don't understand how you couldn't have some repercussions. They're going to see that Federation logo and immediately go Janeway, right? And yeah, I think you're going to have a couple repercussions. I just think that they'll be subtle because this is a new property.
Yeah, we'll see. They definitely said, it's there'll be some familiar species run-ins, but they're also excited to kind of explore other parts of that quadrant and other planets and stories there. At least in the interviews, that's what they've sort of hinted and teased at. And there was a short preview in the Ready Room for next week's episode, which includes, sort of Janeway explaining what the Federation is to the crew. And like, most of them are like, great, let's like set a course. Let's go join the Federation. But then Dahl is not so sure about that. So it'll be interesting to see how they sort of tackle that.
I want to see new stories. I want to see new colors, new dimensions, new types of characters and species in Star Trek. And I think that's what this show is all about, right?
Yeah, I did see someone keeps asking how old Murph is. I cannot find anything that tells me how old Murph is.
Yeah,
because no one can tell me what Murph is.
I like how Rock just brought. Look, I found this. Can we take this fun thing?
I named him Murph.
Yeah, it's like, okay, sure, bring it on. Chupi says people keep wondering why there are so many alpha species in this series, but in Caretaker, which was the Voyager premiere, the Ocampan leader says the Caretaker had been bringing ships in for months. Maybe these are from those. So yeah, I mean, even though even in Voyager, like we ran across some Klingons, there were some Cardassians, like there were few and far between, but they were around. So there's definitely precedence for Alpha Quadrant species being in the Delta Quadrant. And we'll see them, but I just hope we don't see a ton of them. I'd rather see new species and new people.
Yeah, and we have to figure out what Dahl is, because
Right.
he doesn't know. No one really knows where he comes from. So that to me is probably the crux of this first season, is all trying to find where his home is.
Be cool if he's just like an avant-garde, like 24th century human. You know, he's just blue because he thinks it's cool. Yeah, this was a really fun premiere, and as far as our schedule is concerned going forward, I know we're going to dive into every episode of Discovery season 4, and we might just pick up on Prodigy here and there, or we might do every episode. I don't know. We'll see. We'll let you guys know in the Slack, also on Twitter, how we're going to cover this going forward.
Because there will be
Um,
some overlap. So I
mhm.
imagine, it might be, maybe like every other week we can have some like Prodigy time on the pod or something.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe
oh,
you're asking me to watch a lot on one day, so we'll see.
yeah. We're not gonna make you burn the candle at both ends. Don't worry, we'll figure this out. All right, everyone. Anything else to say about this premiere episode of Prodigy?
I think that's it. I'm excited for more. So I mean, so far 10 out of 10 for me. So I'm ready.
Yeah, I'll wrap up by saying I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I assumed that it was going to be good things, but I'm incredibly impressed with what this team has done, and I think they got a hit.
Yeah, I think so too. I know Paramount doesn't really release their numbers, but I would be surprised if this doesn't do well, especially with old fans. I did see there's people in our community who are watching it with their kids.
Mhm.
You know, I've seen Twitter pictures of people introducing their kids to Star Trek with this show. So I think that's what Paramount had in mind, and they didn't just give this new generation of potential fans something that is, you know, that talks down to them, right? They gave them something that is definitely crafted with care, not just with the visuals, but with the actors. Great acting in this series, and also with the storyline and the depth of character. So, thank you for that. All right, I think that's all we got. Mariah, tell people where they can find us online.
Yeah, you can go to StarTrekPod.co to find links to all our socials and to find links to the show. You can also find the link to our Patreon there. It's patreon.com/StarTrekPod, where you can come join us in the Slack so you can talk even more about Prodigy. We can all talk about how much we love Murph, and we can we can continue to try to figure out what Murph is. So come on down and join us.
Where can we find you online, Mariah?
Oh, I'm at Mariah Gossett on all the things. That's Mariah with a Y and a Gossett with 2 S's and 2 T's.
What about you, Clyde?
You can find me and my beard at Clyde Haynes. I'm excited. You can also find me, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you can find me in the chat from time to time. And occasionally, when I can figure out the schedule, back with the watch crew. That's where you can find me.
All right, and you can find me on Twitter and Insta at Mike Moody Garcia. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Live long and prosper.